Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Wanted to release some good news of some closure for family, and certainly to congratulate and commend the continued good work of the Savannah Police Department. The Savannah Police Department's Major Crimes Unit has charged a suspect in the death of Kareem Smalls nearly 1 year after his fatal shooting on Draper Street. Many of you all have heard of him by his moniker, Free Lunch Baby. As you remember, officers responded to Gwinnett and MLK at around 11 o'clock on November the 23rd for a vehicle crash with injuries, and discovered Mr. Smalls in the vehicle suffering from gunshot wounds. And the detectives determined that the shooting occurred in the 600 block of Draper Street. Mr. Smalls was transported to the hospital where he succumbed to the result of his injuries. The chief is here and he can offer any more results, but I think again this highlights again the continued work of the best police department in the land. The reality is, again, if you are engaged in violent behavior, we're going to catch you. In this case, it took a little bit of time, but certainly for his mom, Miss Lavinia, and those that loved him in the Caton Homes area, this certainly comes as a big relief. This is a 24-year-old person that was charged with murder, and he was already in custody in the Chatham County Detention Center on charges connected to a drug investigation from August. So again, public outreach and public input helps, and so I commend Chief Mentor. I commend our Major Crimes Unit and the detectives that have been working so diligently on this, and as a result, we have a murderer, so alleged murderer, off of the streets. Today is also Election Day, and I'm encouraging all Savannahans to get out and vote. As you can see, I voted this morning. It was quick and it was easy. One question, in and out. I could have left my car running, but Chief Mentor would not want me to leave my car running in order to vote. All of Chatham County will be voting on East Blos, or what's known as the Education Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. I'm encouraging Savannahans to support or to vote for the continued viability of this tax, which we already pay. We already paid the penny, which will help us to continue to build and maintain our schools. As I mentioned before, I'm hoping that the City Council will soon enter into a memorandum of understanding with the school system to provide us use of school buildings outside of school hours for educational, recreational, and mentoring services. I think they understand, as we fully do as well, that public schools are strategically located throughout our city. Our public schools are community centers. They are public investments, and they should be used as much as possible. And so hopefully, once we receive that, hopefully this week, we will task the city manager for working out what we need to do based on the city's needs, particularly in areas in which we don't have viable services. So more to come on that. If you live in House District 165, you will be voting to fill the seat left open by the passing of our beloved Representative Mickey Stevens earlier this year. The winner of this election will complete the remaining portion of Representative Stevens' term, which ends next year. So there will be another election for this same seat next year for the new term. This seat is particularly important to us because it represents the city of Savannah, and so we need it filled, and the residents of the 165th need representation. If you need to find your polling place or check out a sample ballot, you can go to my voter page at mvp.sos.ga.gov. mvp.sos.ga.gov. Chatham County residents are now 51% fully vaccinated, but that number has been stagnant for weeks. And as we get into the holiday season, we want you to remember that large gatherings are opportunities for COVID to spread. And your holiday gatherings could be even more special and certainly safer if everyone is fully vaccinated. So please, if you've been vaccinated, we want you to share with people your experience. If it's time for your booster, like it is for mine, go ahead and make arrangements to get that booster. And in all cases, if you have any questions, talk to your doctor or medical provider. Chatham County's COVID-19 metrics continue to trend down. We ended October on a strong stretch with a community transmission index of 100 cases per 100,000. And that was for Thursday and Friday, moving us from high to moderately high community spread for the first time since early July. Yesterday, we bumped up to 103, so we'll see what it does today and for the rest of the week to determine whether an additional emergency declaration or amended emergency declaration is necessary. Our 7-day rolling average of new cases is around 20, and our positive test percentage is now just under 3%. That is more than a 6% drop over the last month. So thanks to our improved COVID status, the city is now allowing large outdoor events within the city limits without capacity limits starting yesterday. Public events inside city facilities will be permitted right now at a 60% capacity. Masks at this point are still required in city-owned buildings, but considering our improved conditions, the city manager will be issuing updated mask guidance on a site-by-site and a case-by-case basis. So again, as the metrics come in, he'll make that decision in terms of how and when. This week, we will host our city's first major public event since January 20th, 2020's MLK Parade, as we welcome the Rock and Roll Marathon to Savannah with additional COVID safety protocols in place. City managers put together a team to be able to address the city's response and to ensure that our guests are doing what they have committed to do. And the Savannah Police Department will be sharing additional information about traffic considerations later on this week. If you have an outstanding city water bill, again, we invite you to make arrangements to pay it or set a payment plan. We're willing to work with you. Our utility services staff are waiting for your calls as they will start assessing fees and service disconnections this week. As we get back to our new normal, we have to get back to our normal business. So again, if you're interested in setting up a new payment arrangement, you should contact Utility Services at 912-651-6460. 912-651-6460, Monday through Friday from 8:15 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. We will work with you, but you have to call. So we don't know what your situation is. Obviously, I think that we've been understanding, and so we'll work with you. But just give us a call, 912-651-6460. We've hired additional temporary staff to help process these requests, but we're asking you still to be patient as we anticipate high call volumes and right now longer wait times. Last week was a remarkably busy week, but a very productive week. My sincere thanks to everyone who helped me deliver the 2021 State of the City address. Bishop Stephen D. Parks of the Diocese of Savannah for offering the invocation, the Esther F. Garrison School of the Arts for the national anthem, for J.L. Daniel and Jaleel White of Savannah Arts Academy for visual and performing arts, for performing Lift Every Voice and Sing, for Valerie Flores of our Savannah Youth Council for the Pledge of Allegiance, both in English and in Spanish, and our amazing Office of Marketing and Communications, Nick Zola and his team, for just doing an amazing job for making things happen. They made it happen, and they helped us to deliver it. So thank you all for that. We celebrated many successes. We've acknowledged our many challenges, and we have charted what we believe is a path forward for the coming year. I particularly thank the city manager for getting in and getting his hands dirty quickly, and I definitely thank the city council for their support and their resolve as we're intentionally making progress on our strategic priorities. On Thursday, Dr. Otis Johnson and the Racial Equity and Leadership Savannah, which is called Real Savannah Task Force, presented its final report to council, and it clearly documented the challenges that we have here as it relates to race and equity in Savannah. This report was made possible by the Sapelo Foundation, the Partnership for Southern Equity, Georgia Power, the Georgia Ports Authority, the Savannah Economic Development Authority, the Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce, the Waters Family Foundation, and the Southeastern Council of Nonprofits. And we thank them for their investment. This is a huge opportunity for us to make real progress in the areas of equity and racial equity. And so we're asking our community to take the time to review this report, to digest this report, and in 2 weeks I am seeking council's adoption of this report and the city manager's implementation of some of the recommendations during our upcoming budget discussions. This is a real opportunity for us. It's not an opportunity to think a point or to blame. As the report clearly said, this is systemic, it's structural. So it didn't happen last year. It didn't happen in the last 20 years. We can trace some of these systems back to 1929, that there were systems set in place by people who are no longer on the scene that were set so that some people in this community did not do well as others. And we see the result of that. So the way we get beyond that is to acknowledge it for what it is and let us all work together to make it better, to create new structures, to create new systems, to fix existing ones, to make our community the beloved community we know it can be. Also, on Thursday, the Savannah City Council unanimously voted to authorize City Manager Jay Melder to negotiate a contract with the P3 Venture Group to develop the historic fairgrounds property. This proposal provides for 20.5 acres for wetlands and trails, 18.3 acres for multi-purpose fields, 14.5 acres for homes and retails, 6.2 acres for production studio and career development, and 11.4 acres for public spaces and parking. This is a project that stood unresolved for over 5 years, and I'm just gratified that this council moved unanimously and decisively to move forward to completion. The work ahead of us is much more intense, as the development plan is the codification of the concepts that were presented to the council and the community, and of course the city manager will be leading that process, and we tell you to stay tuned. Also, on Thursday, the Savannah City Council unanimously voted as we move toward equity in our community to name Juneteenth a national city holiday, paid city holiday for our city employees. It's important that this is the oldest celebrated holiday for African Americans, and it recognizes the news that came to Galveston, Texas, that black enslaved people in the area were finally free, although they were free the year before. So here, this council is making history again, but in the areas of racial equity, it makes sense. So I appreciate the council accepting our recommendation to move forward with this, and so we're hoping that other agencies, other municipalities, other governments will follow suit, and as a community, that we will celebrate the fact that sometimes news don't come when you want it, but it's good news when you get it. And I think that is the message of Juneteenth. And I think that our racial equity work goes hand in hand with that, because people have to be free and people have to feel free. And so, hence the work that we're doing that continues even in 2021. Finally, the city will unveil a new street sign tomorrow morning at Waters and Buhan Avenues to honor John Alliston White Sr. Many of you know Lieutenant White, who was Savannah's first black police officer and was the first black sworn law enforcement officer in Georgia. Lieutenant White served the city for more than 37 years and is the last remaining survivor of the original 9 black officers who integrated the Savannah Police Department in 1947. Lieutenant White was also one of the Montford Point Marines, which were the first black men to serve in the United States Marine Corps. And so I'm looking forward to honoring his service to the city and to our country with an honorary street designation in his name. When you look at people like myself who served in law enforcement and people like Chief Mentor who serves in law enforcement now, we would not be able to serve if it had not been for a Lieutenant John White, who had some harrowing stories about his service in a deeply segregated Savannah when he became the first sworn law enforcement officer of color in Georgia in 1947. So we're looking forward to that. That ends my prepared remarks, and I'll entertain any questions you may
have. Obviously, you touched on it a few minutes ago at the top of your comments about the city hosting a rock and roll marathon, the first major event here in about 18 months. Is there an excitement level for you that we have got to this point where we can host these events again?
I'm cautiously excited. I'm excited because it means that we're getting closer to our new normal. I'm cautious because we're only at 51% vaccinated. So that means that 49% of our general community still can catch COVID-19. There are still people dying because of COVID-19. So at this point, as I said before, we begged, we pleaded with people to do the scientific thing, the thing that is smart to do, go ahead and get vaccinated. And now it's just a matter of personal choice. So we hope that they are okay. We hope that they take means to protect themselves. But, we have to go on. The majority has to go on. And so that's what we're doing.
Morning, Mayor Johnson. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So kind of going off what he said, what do you kind of foresee as any potential challenges or setbacks that might come with hosting the Rock and Roll Marathon and welcoming all these people to our city?
Well, I think that the race itself, I think has a very stable, very viable plan to keep runners safe. Very clear, you have to be vaccinated, you have to have a negative test within 72 hours of the race. The concern is always people who accompany the runners, people who come here to work that may not be vaccinated. So I think that's what the balance is. But I think it signals to our city that we have been very cautious, very thorough, very deliberate in our actions, and now we're in a position now where we're moving forward. A little slower than some other folks, but again, we've chosen to really deal with the science side of it.
And then on the flip side, any advice for locals that might need to navigate around the added traffic this weekend?
Well, I think that's the other challenge. The challenge is that, sometimes we have short memories, and we have to remember that the Rock and Roll Marathon and similar events bring on major traffic disruptions. So we're asking people to listen out for the information from Savannah Police. We want to get that information out, and certainly you all can help us in doing that. There'll be areas to clearly and absolutely avoid. There'll be areas in which there'll be rolling disruptions, and we just need to make sure we pay attention to that. I suspect that, as we usually do, sometimes there are businesses that are inadvertently affected, and we need to make sure we deal with those. Comes to mind funeral homes, for example. We have to make those types of allowances for some of those businesses that have to get through. And so we have a team, I'm sure, already working on that.
And then for City Council to land on P3's model unanimously for the fairgrounds, what was kind of the thought process that went into that within City Council, and how do you think P3's plan can help take full advantage of that project?
Well, my plan was, again, I did not have a particular favorite. I recognize I've been in this long enough to know that you have dog and pony shows, or people come and they show you this and show you that, ooh, then the implementation, hence the development agreement, is where the rubber meets the road. And so I wanted to make sure that the community was engaged, which it was, particularly the Fowler Park neighborhood, which we did. We wanted to make sure that that neighboring community had the opportunity to, and that in Tatumville, to have the opportunity to see the proposals before council did, which is absolutely unusual, but we did that because it's that massive of a project. And then let the city manager do his job, and I think he did an excellent job of explaining the thought process. I think it let people know there's just more than I like that. I mean, no, you have compulsories because the devil's in the details. So in determining that, obviously, 2 of the projects were disqualified for not meeting all of those compulsories, and so his recommendation was what it was. I thought he gave a very strong analysis of why he chose what he chose, and so we accepted his recommendation. And again, for people who will often talk about a divided council, that was unanimous. So I think that is a very clear indication that the council is ready to move forward. I think it gives the city manager very clear direction to get this development plan going. And I think it's very clear, hopefully to P3, that we want them to deliver what they promised to deliver.
I might have missed this. I know it's very early in the process. Is there any rough time frame for how long a project like this would take?
No. City manager just looked at me like deer in headlights. It's like, no.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. It's an extensive process, and it's a negotiation. So, what we will do is we'll have him as we get to various phases in the process. I'll give updates of where we are. Good morning.
So just going back to you talked about the mask mandate and how it sounds like the city manager from the South End that you're doing right now will be making these decisions on a as-you-go basis, kind of specifically to one area and another area. But last week we spoke about that 100 transmission index being kind of a metric for if we stay below that, then the mask come off. Is that still in play? And if so, how long would you be looking to see that number be below 100 before the mask come off?
Well, I think our position has always been the trend rather than the actual number, because you could easily be at 99 today and 103 the next day. Again, for 2 days, Thursday and Friday, we were at 100, and now we're at 103. So I think 3 to 5 days of trending down, I think is a relatively good measure that will stay down. But the good news is we're there. We're right there. We're close to it. Even after we totally lift the mask mandate, I'll still be wearing a mask, and I'll encourage people to do so too. If you're not with people that you live with every single day, and for me that's most people, and I'm absolutely sure of the vaccination status, then I'm going to encourage people to still wear the mask. The reality is, again, people are still getting sick. There's still breakthrough cases, and so we have to make sure that we are very diligent. As we saw last year, I mean, we can do better and then slip right back, doing poorly again. So the goal is let's get there and let's sustain that. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. So
Yeah. Those days, right? I understand.
So I probably missed it already, but could you talk about the work of the Savannah Police Department in progressing some of the responsibilities?
Oh, well, I talked about that at the top of my remarks. I'm happy about it. The fact of the matter was that you had someone to take someone's life, someone who was beloved in our community, and the Savannah Police Department did it again. In a time in which our police department continues to receive criticism, I think that we have to celebrate the successes where they are. 90% of the time, particularly in violent crimes, we're getting the person. And part of the reason why we're getting the person is because A, we have some of the best detectives in the land. Secondly, it's because we have a community that is trusting more and more to tell what they know, which is helping us to build these cases. And so if we could do it for the Smalls family, if we could do it for Kareem Smalls, again, not justice, but accountability. And so I knew Mr. Smalls personally, and so to have this young man to lose his life was devastating, personally hurtful, but on the other end of it, to know that his family will be soon on the road of accountability is really where the rubber meets the road for us. If we have a bunch of cold cases out there, as you know, Alderwoman Linda Wilder Bryan has been very diligent about wearing T-shirts of people. I mean, if we can solve these, we can solve other ones. And so I'll soon, I got off of this, but I want to start, relifting some of these cases because we know people know things. And again, we've shown the ability of the police department to put together strong cases. And as a part of a criminal justice system, we put together what's called probable cause. We arrest them, and from there it goes to the system. It goes to prosecutors. It goes to judges, which we don't control. But again, to Chief Mentor and to the police department, we are making the arrest. And I think that goes a long way in our community. If you do that type of crime here, you're going to get arrested. We're going to catch you. The goal ultimately for us is that once you are involved in gun-related violence, that you're going to go away for a long time. And I think that needs to be the collective message of our judicial and prosecutorial community. Obviously, they should have some discretion, but I think we have to send a message here that violent crime here, particularly violence with a gun, is absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you. And also, could you comment on, do you know when the Civic Center will reopen for public events?
We're open now. See? We're open now. I believe there are some events that are scheduled. I think the issue is just we didn't have any events scheduled. So keep in mind we were going through October the 31st, which was Sunday. So you'll start seeing those events there. The Oakview group, who manages the Civic Center, has worked with us to have some protocols in place for that. We're moving on. We're moving on toward our new normal, to our new best life, and you do that by being vaccinated. Again, and it's a welcome sign, and a sign for the last 21 months or so we've been waiting to hear and see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, Chief. He was kind of hoping you wouldn't, but.
We didn't want you to feel left out.
Oh, well. See how kind you are?
Thank you. Good morning, folks.
Just in general, if you can comment, obviously, about a month or so back, you guys held a news conference with the Smalls family and pleading to get some sort of details. Now you guys have made an arrest. So just your thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, I'm extremely proud and happy with the extreme level, high level of hard work the men and women of the Savannah Police Department put into this investigation. They never stopped working hard on this. They never stopped going out in the community, pounding the pavement, getting some additional information in this case. This case was actually back in May, was transferred from the homicide unit over to our major crimes unit. Primary purpose for that was the lead investigator was promoted to a supervisory position. The major crimes unit took over that investigation and took off running with it, and were able to come to a successful conclusion for this investigation. So, you know, one of the things that I always stress with this is, you know, these investigations, as with other investigations, take a lot of work, and they put in a lot of hours. And you have to keep I want everybody to keep in mind, you know, our last 6 homicides in the city, we've made an arrest in all of the last 6, and we're working on the 7th one that happened on Sunday. But that's a lot of hard work, that's a lot of long hours that the members of the Criminal Investigations Division put in, and I'm extremely proud of what they do on a daily basis.
And is this also, and you guys say it so many times when we talk to you and you guys plead for the public's help, I guess this is another example of you guys need the public's help to crack these cases and make these arrests.
Well, absolutely. You may recall probably about a month and a half ago, we did another press conference with the family. And the family made another plea to the community to come forward with any information they may have regarding this particular incident. And I believe that that press conference was extremely helpful and beneficial in assisting us with where we are today with this investigation. Thank you.
Let me add one thing, a little bit different off of topic. That next, our city council meeting next week will be on Tuesday instead of Thursday because of Veterans Day on Thursday. And on Tuesday, we will have our return to these council chambers, which we have not met in since March of 2020. So back to what you were saying before, a huge milestone for us. It's gotten kind of lonely in here, so I'll be glad to welcome City Council back into the chambers that was made and designed for us to meet and carry out city business. Beyond that, next week we'll be getting into our budget season, and so we'll have the schedule for our budget deliberations as we go into the year. The next 2 meetings, as a matter of fact, will be on Tuesday because the fourth Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we'll have that also on Tuesday. Both of those meetings are at 2 o'clock. We want our employees to have the opportunity to go home with their families, so we don't want to keep them at night on Tuesday. So the holidays are here. Ho, 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 and happy Turkey Day. And I think a lot of us are ready for 2021 to go. When we thought 2020 is like, all right, we can't wait for 2020, and here's 2021. I think we're really, 2022 is looking a whole lot more sunshiny to us. God bless, be safe. Thank you so much.